I didn't think my quiet little corner of Seabrook Cliffs could turn into a full-blown nightmare until I watched Deborah Deb Whitman shaking in a county hearing room trying to explain why her signature was on paperwork that magically turned my private gazebo into community property. The video behind her replayed in slow motion, pen to paper, confident, smug, like she owned my land, and somebody on the panel muttered just loud enough for everyone to hear. She signed it like she owned the man's land. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name's Ethan Cole, and I bought Lot 12A for one reason piece. Treesbird's a little bluff overlooking the water and a gazebo I built myself with my own hands. The best part. Lot 12A sits outside the Seabrook Cliffs Homeowners Association. Not kind of outside, legally outside. It's one of those weird edge parcels with clean paperwork, separate jurisdiction, separate rules, which basically means the HOA can't tell me what color my mailbox should be or how tall my grass can get. You'd think that would make life simpler. It didn't, because my lot also happens to be close enough to the rest of the neighborhood that someone like Deb Whitman could stare at my land from her patio and convince herself it belonged to her. The first time it happened, it was almost funny. Almost. It was a Saturday morning and I stepped out with coffee, still half asleep, wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt that said, "Leave me alone." I heard music first, some bubbly pop song, then laughter, then the scrape of folding chairs on gravel. I blinked and looked down toward my gazebo. And I swear to you, a whole parade of people was walking down my private path like they were headed to a resort. 26 guests. I counted. Balloons, gift bags, matching pastel outfits, somebody carrying a cake. And right at the front, holding a clipboard like it was a badge, was Deb Whitman. She gave me this bright, weaponized smile. "Oh, good," she said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Ethan's here. Perfect timing." I stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "Deb," I said slowly, "what is this?" She flipped a page on her clipboard like she was reading from scripture. "Today's wellness reveal," she announced. "We're using the lower bluff. You didn't respond to the notices, so I assumed you were fine with it." I pointed my coffee mug down the path. "My gazebo is not part of your neighborhood amenities." Deb tilted her head, still smiling. "That depends on what map you're looking at," she said. That's when I realized she wasn't confused. She was testing me. People behind her were already stepping onto my deck board, setting down coolers like they owned the place. I watched a kid kick his shoes off on my property like he'd done it 100 times. I felt my jaw tighten. "Everyone needs to turn around," I said, keeping my voice calm. "This is private property. You're not authorized to be here." And Deb actually laughed. "Oh, Ethan," she said like I was an unruly child. "Don't be dramatic. It's just for a couple hours." That's when one of her guests, this guy with a man bun and sunglasses, pulled out his phone and said loudly, "I'm calling 911. I froze. "Why?" I said. "Are you calling 911? He didn't even look at me. He just turned slightly away like he was performing for an audience. "There's a homeowner getting aggressive," he told the dispatcher, "threatening a community event." Deb didn't stop him. She just stood there with her clipboard looking satisfied, like this was all part of the plan. And the thing is, when someone calls 911, it changes the air. Even if you've done nothing wrong, even if you know you're right, it turns you into the problem. 10 minutes later, a patrol car rolled up. The officer stepped out calm but alert, hand resting near his belt like he'd done this dance 1,000 times. And Deb rushed up to him immediately. "Officer," she said, voice shaking in this fake, delicate way, "we're just trying to hold a neighborhood wellness gathering and he's being hostile." Hostile. I'm standing there holding coffee and sweatpants. The officer looked at me, then looked at the crowd, then back at Deb. "What's the issue?" he asked. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just walked inside, grabbed the folder I keep for property documents because, yes, I keep a folder because I'm not stupid, and I handed it to him. Lot boundary, survey, deed, highlighted lines, clear as daylight. "Lot 12A is outside the HOA, I said. "This is private property. They're trespassing." The officer read it slowly, then looked at Deb. "Ma'am," he said, "do you have documentation showing this belongs to the association?" Deb's smile twitched. She flipped through her clipboard like a magician searching for a missing trick. "Well," she said, "it's always been used by the community." The officer's face didn't change. "Used by the community doesn't make it community property," he said. The guests started grumbling. Somebody muttered something about unfriendly neighbors. Someone else scoffed like I was ruining their day on purpose. But the officer told them to leave. And they did. Not because they respected me, not because they believed I was right, because a uniform told them to. As they walked away, Deb brushed past me and leaned in close enough that only I could hear. "You can push back once," she whispered, voice low and sharp. "But I always win long term." Then she straightened up, smiled at the retreating crowd, and waved like she was the victim. I stood there watching them disappear up the path, and the anger in my chest didn't fade. It hardened. Because I knew people like Deb don't stop. They escalate. And she did fast. Over the next week, the Seabrook Cliffs Homeowners Association started sending letters. Not friendly ones, official-looking ones. Notice of interference with community amenities, violation of neighborhood harmony, refusal to cooperate with homeowner wellness initiatives. It was ridiculous, but it was also strategic. The language was designed to make me look like some selfish hermit who hated the neighborhood. Then the gossip started. At the grocery store, I'd catch people whispering. At the gas station, someone I'd never met gave me a dirty look. Online neighborhood posts popped up about the guy who's blocking access to the community reflection point. Reflection point. My gazebo. My land. My lumber. My sweat. And I'll be honest, there was a moment late one night where I sat at my kitchen table staring at those letters and thought, maybe I should just let them use it sometimes. Maybe it's not worth the stress. Maybe I'm the one being stubborn. That's the part nobody talks about. When you're being pressured hard enough, you start questioning your own reality. You start wondering if you're misreading things, if you're overreacting. I even caught myself thinking, what if I'm the bad guy here? And that scared me, because I knew exactly what that meant. It meant her plan was working. The breaking point came a few nights later. My phone buzzed at 1:13 a.m., motion detected. I opened the security app, squinting at the screen, and my blood went cold. There was Deb, in the dark, on my property. She wasn't alone. 2 other HOA board members were with her, hauling wooden stakes and a sign. They moved like they'd done this before, quick, confident, practiced. And then right there beside my gazebo stairs, they planted a sign into the ground. The camera caught the words as Deb stepped back to admire it. Meditation point managed by HOA Wellness Committee. I stared at the screen, my mouth literally open. She wasn't holding a meeting. She wasn't asking. She was marking territory. Like a dog. I saved the clip. Then I saved it again twice to different drives because something in my gut told me this was going to matter. The next morning I called a lawyer, Mark Reynolds. He was the kind of guy who didn't waste words. His voice sounded like paperwork and coffee. I sent him the footage. He watched it, and he just said, "Good." I blinked. "Good. They crossed a legal threshold," he said. "They're claiming jurisdiction they don't have. Keep gathering evidence. Do not engage emotionally. Let them hang themselves." I didn't feel calm, not really. But hearing someone say plainly that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't overreacting, it pulled me back from the edge. So I upgraded my cameras, I kept records, I screenshot every post, I saved every letter. And Mark started digging. A few days later he called me, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice, just a sliver. "Ethan," he said, "Deb tried to expand the HOA boundary back in 2015. The county denied it. In writing. They told her she can't absorb outside parcels without unanimous consent." I exhaled slowly. "So she knows," I said. "She's always known," Mark replied, "which means this isn't confusion. It's a strategy." Then he sent me something else, an internal email, Deb writing to the board. It wasn't poetic, it was worse, clinical. "If residents believe it's common space," she wrote, "Cole will eventually yield. Perception is stronger than ownership." I read that line 3 times. Perception is stronger than ownership. That's when my self-doubt evaporated, because it wasn't about wellness. It wasn't about community. It was about control. And she was counting on me being tired enough, isolated enough, embarrassed enough to give up. Not anymore. Mark filed a formal complaint with the county, unauthorized jurisdiction claims, fraudulent signage, harassment, trespass. And then the day came. A county inspector arrived with a tablet, a measuring wheel, and 2 people behind him carrying equipment. A drone case sat on the hood of their vehicle. The whole neighborhood came out to watch like it was entertainment. Deb showed up in a bright jacket like she was hosting a parade, clipboard in hand, smile on face. "Thank you for coming," she said warmly to the inspector. "We're hoping to clear up this boundary confusion." The inspector looked at her, expression flat. "We're not here to clear up confusion," he said. "We're here because a legal complaint was filed about unauthorized claims of jurisdiction." Deb's smile stiffened. I stood a few feet away, hands clenched, trying to keep my breathing steady. The drone went up. It hovered over the bluff, quiet and precise mapping lines that Deb couldn't bully or charm. The inspector walked the perimeter, comparing the drone overlay to official records. And then he stopped. He looked right at Deb. Lot 12A is not under Seabrook Cliffs Homeowners Association authority, he said. It is private property. Deb's face tightened. That can't be right, she said quickly. It's always been used by the neighborhood. Usage does not establish jurisdiction, the inspector cut in. Deb's voice sharpened. He's being difficult. He's hostile. He called the police on us. I couldn't help it. A laugh slipped out, bitter and tired. Actually, I said you called 911 at 10 in the morning because I wouldn't let 26 strangers throw a party on my land. The crowd murmured. Deb's eyes flashed at me, pure hatred hidden under that polite mask. Mark stepped forward, then calm as ice, and held out a small flash drive. We'd like to submit evidence, he said. The inspector plugged it into his tablet, and the video played Deb in the dark planting the sign. Her face was right there on screen. Clear. Undeniable. Deb lifted her hands, palms out, voice suddenly trembling in that fake way again. That footage is out of context, she insisted. You don't understand. The inspector didn't even blink. Context doesn't change jurisdiction, he said. And in that moment, something in the crowd shifted, because people love power until they see how it works. Deb opened her mouth, then closed it. Her eyes darted around, searching for support, for allies, for someone to rescue her. But nobody stepped in. The inspector turned to his team and spoke like he was reading from a final verdict. The Seabrook Cliffs Homeowners Association has no authority over Lot 12A, he said. Any further attempts to claim or manage this property will be treated as unlawful. Remove the signage immediately. Further violations may result in legal action. Deb stood there, clipboard hanging useless at her side, like someone had yanked the floor out from under her. And that still wasn't the end, because Mark didn't just want her to stop. He wanted her exposed. A couple weeks later, we were in that county hearing room. Deb sat at the table, trying to look composed, hair perfect, lipstick flawless. But her knee kept bouncing under the desk. Mark submitted the documents, the email, the prior county denial from 2015. And then he played the clip, not the trespass one, the signing clip, because somewhere along the way, Deb had pushed even further, drafting paperwork, submitting revisions, trying to make the HOA's claim look legitimate on record. And the camera caught her signing it, pen in hand. No hesitation, like she owned my land. The hearing room went quiet. Deb's lawyer tried to speak, tried to soften it, tried to spin it into a misunderstanding. But the panel wasn't interested in spin. They were interested in facts. And facts don't care how confident you look holding a clipboard. Deb's face went pale as the panel chair leaned forward and asked very calmly, Ms. Whitman, on what authority did you sign documents asserting control over property outside your association? Deb swallowed. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. And that's when I heard it, the mutter from the panel, half disbelief, half disgust. She signed it like she owned the man's land. Deb's shoulders sagged. Not dramatically, not theatrically. Just defeated. Like the mask finally got too heavy to hold up. Lesson learned. If you don't defend what's yours, someone like Deb will happily rewrite reality until you believe you never owned it at all.